Episode number 48 of People I Know Show. Curt Carstensen here with Bryan Piatt. Back to the podcast, Bryan.
Honored. Thanks for having me back.
You're one of the rare few so far to be back on. And having you back on today is a follow-up to your previous episode. This is going to be episode 48, which puts us about 4 months after episode 32.
Wow.
And that was at the end of May when we recorded that. And I guess if you can, for those listening that have not listened to that podcast, I'd say go back and do it. But if you're not going to do it, let's give a recap of what you recall from that day and what that kind of set in motion, it seemed. Because for me, ever since then, you've been doing a lot of things you hadn't done prior to what you talked about that day.
Yep.
And your life has, I think, been changing quite a bit.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I have this little bracelet that I wear on my wrist for the year 2019, and my word has been action, and that's what I feel like I've been trying to put in motion here this year, actually taking action on a lot of the things that I've been talking about doing for a really long time. So it's hard to believe that was back in May that we talked. I feel like it's been this huge journey for me over the last several months of really opening up and talking on a bigger scale about my own journey with mental health and some of the things that I've gone through there. I mean, mental health has been a journey that I've been on, obviously in my own life for a long time. It goes back to me as a kid and, middle school and that sort of thing. But I've really gotten to this place now where, since the last time that I talked to you, I was honored to have an article written about me by Minn Post. Andy Steiner is her name, did an absolutely beautiful job over there with Minn Post, where I opened up about my own story with anxiety and with obsessive compulsive disorder and some changes that I've made at KARE-11 as far as kind of, stepping off the air and doing some things to really put my mental health at the forefront. And then that article kind of led to me doing a story or doing an interview, sitting down with my colleague over at KARE-11, Jana Shortle, where I really opened up and she did a beautiful job talking to me just about some of the decisions that I've made as far as what I've been through with my mental health and a decision to really step off the air and move into more of an off-air role at KARE-11. So it kind of feels like that week was like my mental health coming out party of sorts. I guess it all kind of happened literally in a week. It was amazing.
Was it the plan to do some of what was about to happen when we talked, or did that kind of coincidentally things fall in place?
So I think it was building, and I think when we had talked on this podcast, I had opened up already on the Refresh Network.
Yeah, you had rebranded it. You're saying you're going to be talking mental health, but nothing about you had really.
Yeah. So for people that haven't heard, so the Refresh Network is something that I started back in 2000. I think it was 16 that we started. My friend or myself and my good friend Bruce Myers started as this outlet for us to talk to people about things that they'd been through in their life and just kind of life lessons that they've learned along the way. And then we decided to recently just rebrand it more with a mental health lens, so talking to people about their mental health. And as part of that, I opened up about my own struggles with anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. And so I had done that, so it was kind of out there in social media world. And then it's really just amazing, I guess, how things happen. I did that. That actually connected me with a dear friend of mine, Kelly Grosslogs, who then kind of introduced me to Andy Steiner over at Minn Post, and then she decided to do the article. And then, the article kind of led to me sitting down with Jana. So I think I had stepped into this place of wanting to be more open about it and be more vocal. Just kind of using my platform that I have at KARE-11 to talk about some of this to help other people. And so I still am on this ride of not really knowing what shape that's all going to take. But so I think when we talked, I wasn't really sure where it was all going, but I'd stepped into this space in my life of saying, hey, I want to be more open about this. And I've just kind of been on this wave ever since.
And the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast again is around, I think later part of the summer, I went to a workshop about vulnerability, and I started to put the pieces together, I think, from our conversation and a couple others that I've done with the podcast, that it's those types of people being open about certain subjects that really, I think, connects with giving me a greater purpose doing this, but also I think just are a better listen. Like when someone's dealing with something, but they're trying to do good with it.
Yeah.
I think that's really engaging, and I think it's something that if I can find a way to find people willing to share on certain topics, and then have this podcast be a way to put that out, it's going to help other people. But I also think that it's going to help the people doing it. So I wanted you back on. So you have been, I'd imagine, as vulnerable as you've ever been, at least in a public display, and it's all happened in a matter of just the last few months. And I wanted to get your 90-day recap of what it has meant for you, for, I guess, your current mental health as of today, how talking about it has impacted it, but also the direction that you feel like your life is going to be taking. So take whichever one of those first.
I think, I think, full disclosure, I think that week of me opening up and talking about it, and having the article come out, and then talking to Jana, I was kind of a mess mentally, to be honest with you. Like I think I was putting a lot of pressure on myself as the announcement, as I started doing it. Like all of a sudden I have to have all the answers, and all of a sudden like I have to be this person that can guide people and have tips for people to manage their mental health, when the reality is I'm still a human that's very much on that journey of managing my own mental health, and then trying to kind of figure out how do I have these two things coexist, where it's me trying to help people and then also just take care of myself on a day-to-day basis. But I have been, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, actually. I feel like if I looked at myself like a year ago, I feel like I am in such a better place right now when it comes to my mental health, even just in a year. So I think, and I think that's a combination of a lot of things. I think that's me really doing a lot of, having my own like mental health toolkit per se of just really nurturing my mental health every single day. And also I think stepping in and talking about it kind of takes away its power, I would say, whether that's mental health or whatever that is for you in your life. And you've talked about that a lot on your podcast, obviously, is when you kind of take the thing that's been the big struggle, and then you kind of realize that, hey, this doesn't have to be the thing that kind of drags me down, but it can actually be the thing that ultimately like connects me to other people. I would say the most amazing thing since I have opened up on a bigger scale and talked about this stuff is the number of people that have reached out to me and have said, hey, me too, or this is what I've been going through, and all these people that are sharing their own stories. I feel like it's cut a lot of the, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, I allow individuals to be who they are.
Okay, I would just say it's cut a lot of the bullshit out of a lot of conversations that I have with people now, where I feel like we get to the real stuff quicker. You know what I mean? Like with my mental health out there, I would say that there's less small chat now when I connect with people, and I feel like we get to more of like the real thing that's going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, small talk is one of my least favorite things.
It's exhausting, right? And there's a place for it, and it's just part of life. But I would say that that's been it's been so amazing to just really actually get to how are you doing, as opposed to like dancing around the subject. I would say that I've been finding more and more of that happening over the last few months.
So are you saying because people are now more aware that you're dealing with what you've been dealing with, and that you're clearly okay with talking about it because you've spoken about it on a very large scale, people can just come up and ask you instead of being on the bush or never getting to it?
Well, I think it's allowed people to say, hey, I struggle with this too, or I've been, even if it's not the same thing, I've been going through this. And so then obviously all of a sudden, I think when you are really struggling with something internally, there's nothing harder than having to like step out into the world and pretend like you're not struggling and try to hold it all together and that sort of thing. And of course I'm still doing that to an extent, just because that's the reality of being a human some days. But I would say I've moved much more in this direction of like integrating that struggle into my day-to-day experience. So like I have all these things that I've learned about how to manage my mental health, and I feel like now I can actually bring that to the table for people when I'm talking to them. Like, we can get into discussions, and I feel like I can offer up things to people maybe that is helpful to them, perhaps, I hope, in some way, as opposed to like just keeping that piece of me hidden and kind of like buried to the side.
Prior to these last few months, can you count the number of people in your life that you've actually opened up on these topics to? Is it less than 10, less than 5?
You know,
or has it been quite a few?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I don't know like the exact number, but I've had people reach out to me that I would say I'm pretty close to, that have said, I had no idea that you were going through this, you know, and I think that's what's kind of scary with a lot of mental health struggles, is that it's so invisible, right? Like so I don't know how many people in my life really like realized what was going on. I mean, obviously I'm very close to my mom. My mom knows, most of my family I think knows, but even them, I think they've gotten to understand it maybe at a deeper level. You know, I just actually did an event recently where I was up on stage really talking about this stuff, and I had most of my family there, and that was really scary for me to like all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm like actually talking about the real stuff in front of, family members who I'm really close to, but it's really forced me to, I guess, be vulnerable in kind of a whole new way. So, I do have people close to me for sure in my life that I've been grateful and have been able to share these things with over the years, but now it's just kind of at a bigger scale.
You make a good point there. I find, for instance, traveling, you can meet people and you might never see them again. You can really talk about deep things more quickly with someone that you maybe connect with them well, but also you just have the sense that, this is a safe space to talk about this because these people don't know me. They're not going to be in my life later on. So the fact that you've gone to a public sphere to talk about this, and then people relatively close to you are coming in and saying, I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
So that does bring up an aspect of this that I hadn't thought about too much, but I think I realize a little bit from some of the things that I've been through that it creates this conversation that you can have with this person, which is maybe often a good conversation to have, but now suddenly people that you know pretty well know things about you they never knew about you before, and it does bring up a conversation that I don't know if it's always that easy to learn how to navigate that. So I guess express a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think vulnerability is scary. I think it's like it's a scary thing to really open up yourself in that way and have, I've found this, a lot of what's come up for me, I think, since I've like done the interview with Jana, and since I've really opened up, like I don't want to come across as like I'm constantly like complaining about my mental health, or I don't want to be like over dramatic about it, and those are just, I think, fears that come up for me around like being vulnerable, and kind of like my own. I just feel like I get very insecure about that, and so but I'm also like trying to just come back to this whole notion of, it is scary. It's scary to be vulnerable. It's a new space. I'm not used to operating in this space of really putting things out there. It's a different way of operating for me, but it's one that I think nurtures deeper connection with people, and I think it's allowed me to really get to know people, and I think connect with people in a whole different way. I don't think that answered your question at all, but that's kind of like where my mind went with it.
Sometimes the answer is better than the question, so
I don't know about that, but I mean, Curt, I think I've been like so focused on just getting really good at being uncomfortable. I honestly think like that's what all of this has been about. I don't all of a sudden, just by talking about this, like have answers that I didn't have before. I don't have all everything figured out. I don't think we ever fully do. I think what I have always come back to throughout this whole journey is I might feel like a mess, and I might feel like I have no idea what I'm talking about, and maybe I'm not qualified to be talking about this stuff in a public way, but I'm just gonna try to do my best to like invite all that stuff along for the ride and feel wickedly uncomfortable. And I think I'm trying to settle into that space more and more, because I'm realizing like that's how I can like help people, is to just like I hope that I have something in me and an experience and just, you know, my journey. I hope it can at least help a couple people out there, but nobody's going to hear that if I'm getting in my own way. And so I'm learning as a human being how to just be really uncomfortable and keep showing up for all these things, whether that's doing the podcast with you, whether that's saying yes to like speaking engagements. You know, vulnerability is scary as hell, but it's also, I think, what we're all craving too.
Have you, since starting this part of your existence the last few months, have you regretted it in any way? Regretted any aspect of it? Because as I'm talking with you, I want this to be encouragement. If
yes,
your perspective is so that it's been 100% positive, best way to do it, I want to encourage either other people to do this with me on the podcast or just in whatever aspect of their life to just release what is trapped in some part of their mind and is sticking there and weighing them down, that it's not going to be a negative. Are there negatives with doing this, or have you been like, this is the
no?
Oh, I'm so glad I did it.
So glad that I did it, and I do not regret it at all. I mean, I think there's days where I feel like really overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how do I keep showing up for this? And I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to like do more than what I really. Ultimately, I just need to like show up every day, and I think I've felt a lot of pressure. I think that I've just put on myself throughout this, but I do not at all regret doing it. I absolutely feel like this is where, I mean, quote unquote, where I'm meant to be at this point in my life. I think that this is how I'm able to help people at this point in my life. I think that this is where I'm supposed to be and what I'm meant to be doing.
So we're talking about vulnerability, and you had mentioned just when I arrived here that you would listen to my most recent episode, which I did a bonus episode on paruresis, which is shy bladder syndrome. Go back and listen to that if you don't know what that is. But I found like when I was recording that, and I'm recording it not live, like it's just to myself, I could do it again. Yeah. I felt not that vulnerable recording it. Maybe because I'm just used to talking into this microphone. But then the hesitation grew greater when I was about to press share and like, okay, so I knew that it existed, but me recording it, not vulnerable, me knowing that the more times I post it and the more effort I do to like push it out to the world, the more people are gonna hear it. And even though I want people to hear it, because I know it's for like the greater good, it's like, do I really want to tell anyone else about this?
Totally.
So you can relate to that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
For sure. I mean, I have things, you know, even I have more things that I have not shared at all that I actually, as I was listening to you talking about that, I was thinking like, you know, there's certain things that I'm not comfortable sharing yet about, you know, a lot of like OCD type stuff that like, I'm like, oh my, I cannot even imagine how scary that would be to like put that out into the world. So like I felt that when you were saying that, like that took so much bravery to say that into a microphone. And I also thought about, you know, knowing that what it's like to sit down and record something where you kind of have control of when it's going to get put out there. Like for me, I would probably have this temptation to like record it 75 times because I wanted it to be perfect and I wanted it to like, you know, and like overanalyzing that to the nth degree. And sometimes you just have to like sit down and do it to the best of your ability and just put it out there and just kind of like let it go where it needs to go.
So would you describe that as being a part of your obsessive compulsive disorder, wanting to do, because I did it one time and thought, you know, this could be better. This is one shot, me talking for like 30 minutes nonstop. And it's like, I could do it over. It's going to take time, whatever. Just this gets the general point across. There's things in it that I wish I would have said differently, but you know what? I'm going to have more opportunities. Yeah. If it's something that people want to hear more about, I'll tell every possible story I can from my memory about dealing with that social anxiety disorder. And if no one's really that interested, then I guess we'll just move on to something else.
But it's also, and I'll answer your question here in a second, but what I've tried to remind myself is that me sharing stuff is not for the person that doesn't get it. It's for that maybe just one person out there that needs to hear that, right? That may be really struggling, whether that's shy bladder syndrome or whether that's anxiety or whether that's, you know, obsessive compulsive disorder or whatever it is. Like that has been something that I've had to remind myself over and over again, that like, because I think it can feel really scary. I'll envision like people at work and I'm like, oh my gosh, do I really want this person, you know, to like hear me saying this? Like, that's really scary and vulnerable. But you know what? We're not doing it for the people that don't get it. We're sharing stuff for the person that needs to hear that, and then it needs to feel like less alone.
And I agree with that. And I guess the magic of the internet, I don't know if it's magical or if it's just kind of the way it works.
Yeah.
I received an email a couple days ago from the CEO of the International Pareuresis Association.
No way, really?
And he's going to come on the podcast. I'm assuming everything goes as planned. There'll be an episode with him in a few weeks. And he, based on the TEDx talk that he gave that I watched, this was like his battle that he turned into becoming a professor at a major university, and he's founded a couple organizations that should help people dealing with that, and just like the public bathrooms in general.
Yeah.
I think there's people that have operations and they have a public restroom and give very little thought to the experience. And for some people, it's no big deal. And I think for a lot of people, it's, I don't really want to go in here, but I have to.
Yep.
So that's a whole nother topic, but that's like, oh, I said this, I talked to myself for a half hour, put it on the internet, and now the guy, maybe like the leading person in this whole industry, reached out to me. It's like, okay.
Isn't that amazing?
It's probably worth doing these things.
Absolutely. And because I think so many people out there are, I mean, I say the word all the time, struggle. Like, I feel like I kind of sound like a broken record, but that was one of my biggest takeaways after I opened up and did the, did the interview and that sort of thing, is like, we need to give people out there a permission to struggle. Like, it's okay. We all have this like false illusion that we're the only one that's going through something, and that there's something really wrong with us because we're having a hard time with a certain something. And that is it's just not the reality. And that's not to diminish anybody's struggle. It's hard, each person's struggle is unique, and there's unique, features to it. You're the only one that's lived your life. But there's this illusion that I'm the only one struggling and everybody else has it all together. I think so many of us feel that, and it's just not true. And I can tell you I've just gotten a little glimpse into the number of people that have reached out to me and opened up about what they're going through. And, I would have never guessed. Like, the number of people I shared some stuff about with OCD, intrusive thoughts, and some stuff that I've experienced in that area. So many people reaching out to me saying, wow, I didn't understand what was going on with me until like I heard you say that. And we just need more people in this world, I think, with the courage, like yourself, to come forward and put yourself in that uncomfortable space and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. And I think we chip away at shame throughout that process, because I think that shame can attach to these things in such a drastic way. And that's that's what can totally take us out, is the shame. So when you're ready too, I also don't know that it's just maybe the best thing to just go around and shout everything out into the world at all times. I mean, maybe that works for some people, but I think doing the work on yourself to be at a place where you feel like, hey, I don't think we're ever 100% ready to do it, because I think you can get caught in that space of, I need to 100% be ready to do something. Like, I got news for you. You're never going to feel 100% ready to do anything. It's going to feel scary as hell. But I think you can make sure that you're at least at a place where you have some sort of solid footing and you're ready to talk about it.
And find the piece of the things that you're dealing with that you feel like you can put that out there first. Like, this shy bladder thing, if this was 15 years ago, and like when we were at St. Cloud State together, I think that was around one of the worst points. I still was dealing with it, but somewhere in there I started to learn how to slightly improve and gradually get better. Yeah. 15 years ago, I had a hard time telling anyone in my life, much less talking to a potentially huge audience about it. Now, that's something that I thought, okay, this is something, it's embarrassing and shameful, or it was, but I can talk about, it's like a stepping stone to probably me being more vulnerable about other things, kind of like you were saying, that brought thoughts of things that you're not ready to talk about. I'd imagine, though, because you've taken this first step, there's probably one of those thoughts you're probably closer to being ready to talk about at the right time. And it's just a part of the process of moving forward and finding the things that, I don't know if it's whether they're going to have the biggest impact, or maybe you're just slightly more comfortable with or slightly less comfortable with, and just kind of go forward from there.
Yes, because I mean, that was key for me. I had a lot of people really reminding me that as I was, talking to them about at some point opening up about this, and I was always like, God, I don't know that I'm ready to like talk about everything. There are certain things that I do feel more comfortable about it, and exactly right. I think you start somewhere. If you feel like you're at a place where you want to share, you do not have to put everything out there. If the whole story does not need to be made public, just you kind of the tip of the iceberg is gonna be so incredibly healing for somebody else out there, and also for yourself too, because that's what I think there's a really interesting kind of concept with vulnerability and sharing, is that it's simultaneously, I think, healing you and other people at the same time. And that's not as selfish. I used to always be like, am I just doing this for myself? Am I only I was really hard on myself actually that week that I opened up about it. Was like, am I doing this for like attention? Like my mind started getting really, am I doing this for the wrong reasons? Do I just want attention and And I had a beautiful talk with somebody that I'm really close to, and he just said, you know what, like maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but you're hopefully helping people in the process. I think there's absolutely an element to being vulnerable that it's about taking care of ourselves too.
And I'd imagine a part of that is kind of trying to give yourself the perspective of other people. Are they going to think that I'm doing this for attention? Which is something I'm getting much better at not really caring what other people think, but certainly I'm not down to zero on that. I still have an awareness. It's just trying to figure out what I can do that is going to be allowing me to have a greater purpose for my life, but also have a positive impact more than the concern for what other people are the people that don't understand it are going to think. The people that get it, great. I mean, they're going to get it, and they're going to be the ones that are patting you on the back and saying, thank you for doing that. But it's whatever percentage of the people that aren't, just can't worry about them. And it's easier said than done, but I think I'd imagine doing through this process, you probably concern yourself with those people less and less because of all the people that appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you also start to realize, you start to see the people that really show up for you in your life too. That's been, I think when you do enter a really vulnerable space, you really see some beautiful stuff from people around you that maybe even people sometimes that you didn't really expect to be there to like show up and whether it's sending a text message or whether it's, whatever it is. I think it connects you so deeply to other people around you. And that's because ultimately we're all human, we're all human beings on this planet trying to figure it out the best we can. And part of that is deep struggle. And I think I'm kind of off topic here, but I just think the more of us that can just raise our hand and say, damn, this is hard, and this has been really hard for me, I think it just gives all of us a collective exhale to step into whatever it is that you're going through.
I agree with you, and that's the purpose of this conversation, to encourage more. I want to get into the personal growth and being wrong segment, give you another shot at that 4 months later. But one last thing, do you have a more direct path forward that you're looking at with your life from this point, having gone through these last few months?
I think right now I'm really I feel very, very, I always want to say called. I don't know that is like always the right word for me that feels the most authentic, but I feel very drawn towards continuing on this path of just sharing my story and just seeing who it can help. I so strongly believe that we're not talking about mental health enough, and there's this illusion out there that we're the only ones that are struggling with certain things, and I think I just want to be a part of helping to kind of let other people know that it's safe to struggle, and that it's okay, right? Like just that it's okay. So I'm continuing to invest in the Refresh Network and really trying to really grow that as best as I can with the time that I have at the moment. Also, I'm still working over at KARE-11, really grateful for that as well, doing some some segments that I feel really, really good about over there as well too. So I'm just kind of taking it day by day, and just seeing, nurturing myself the best that I can so that I can like show up and be there for other people. Because if I don't take care of myself, I can't sit there and hold space for people, when they reach out and tell me what they're going through. So that wasn't a very clear answer, but I think I'm just taking it day by day.
You're progressing in a direction, but you're not quite sure
Yeah,
where it is.
Yeah, we'll figure out. Check back in 3 more months.
Okay,
we'll see where I'm at.
Let's move then to the personal growth segment, and this whole conversation's about your personal growth, and I think my personal growth, and encouraging other people's personal growth in this aspect of life. Can you put into words maybe something differently than we've already talked about, or something relating that you are continuing to specifically work on as a part of your personal growth, and something that you think is worth sharing?
Getting wickedly uncomfortable. I know I've already said it, but I can kind of elaborate on that. That honestly for me is, I think, at the core of my own journey right now, is particularly in relationships. I think that I'm somebody that has always really felt this giant pressure to like perform for other people and be whatever that person needs me to be, and to like avoid conflict and really like a lot of insecurities when it comes around just being in relationship, whether that's friendships or romantic relationships. I'm really, really working on sitting with that stuff more, because I literally get like a physical reaction sometimes when I notice myself start to get really close to people. I want to run, and I want to keep people at a distance, and I want to get the anxiety to go away. And that's been a really big theme that's played out in my life over and over. And I think I'm finally starting to call it out and realize that leads to a pretty lonely existence. And so that's one thing that I've really been focusing on here over the last few months is sitting with the uncomfortableness, sticking with those relationships, friendships, whatever it is, and just allowing myself to kind of let things unfold organically and kind of get out of my own way. I think that's, I so wholeheartedly believe that we're like our own worst enemies in that way. I think if we just allow ourselves to sit with the things as they're coming up, whether that's emotions, whether that's thoughts, whether that's like sensations in our body, anxiety, all of that, it's resisting this urge to push it away and get really good at just allowing it to be part of the process, and learn how to be more resilient to it as opposed to trying to make it all go away. That's something huge that I'm really trying to work on and continuing to show up throughout the process.
Does this mean then it's inspiring different types of conversations, or just conversations at all with the individuals that you might have kind of ran away from previously?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like learning how to, and I've always been somebody that's operated with this belief that like confrontation or like disagreeing with like I always for some reason have always felt like I'm not allowed to like disagree with people. Like if I disagree with somebody, like that causes a lot of anxiety for me. And there's actually, that's actually a pretty like OCD thing. There's actually like a subtype of OCD called relationship OCD, where like you're really like hyper focused on, is this the right person for me? Oh my gosh, do I feel connected to this person enough to be friends with them, to be in a relationship with them, and that's kind of a whole other discussion. But so there is, I think, like some OCD elements to that I'm learning through, and then learning about, and then I think also just learning how to I think just recognize that it's okay just because I disagree with somebody and we have a differing viewpoint on something. That always used to feel like, okay, I'm not allowed to be like in relationship with that person. I don't know if this is making
No, I think it makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
because so your, let's say, previous relationship, exhibit A in this, whichever one you want to think of,
Yep.
it took a path to wherever it went because you were super agreeable, but as you were being agreeable, inside of you, you were maybe not liking, not wanting, but you didn't know how to have those conversations or how to disagree. So now you're kind of deeper into this relationship, friendship with someone that
Yes.
you feel like you're not as close as the time that you've spent because you haven't said the right things. So then you don't know how to like fix it later. So then you just maybe disappear.
And I think it was, yes. And I think it was like, I lost myself a lot in relationships. And I think I do that a lot because I I start to feel like I just need to become whatever that person needs to be. Well, then ultimately it lands me in the space of being really good at like winning people over. Like I feel like that's always been a strength of, well, I mean, that sounds really kind of douchey to say, but I didn't mean it that way. I would say that the pattern has been like, I get really fixated on like, I need to make this person like me, right? And like I'm really good like initially often in relationships. But then when it gets to that point of, seems like it always would hit a point where then, oh shit, I don't really know how to operate once we get this deep into the relationship. And I think a lot of that is like learning how to, like, it's okay. Like it's been such a light bulb moment for me. I'm allowed to disagree with people, like, and that doesn't mean that that's a bad person for me. That's just human, right? Like we're gonna have disagreements, and that can actually bring us closer. So I think learning how to like not lose myself as much in relationships, kind of bring more of me into relationship with people, is a huge, I think, focus, and kind of maybe like the next like frontier of a lot of my healing. I was with OCD, and I think this happens a lot with just mental health in general. When you're so immersed in symptoms of, you know, for me it was intrusive thoughts, just like beating the hell out of me, you know, day in and day out, and I was really, really struggling with that. And it's hard to work on really deeper things when you have that kind of surface level thing going on. And I think I've maybe gotten to a place right now where some of that stuff has settled down through medication, through therapy, through, you know, just lifestyle things, speaking out, being vulnerable. And I think now it's maybe opening up this pool for me, and it's gotten me to a place in my life where now, like, wow, now I can kind of get to some of these deeper things going on, you know, in how I show up in the world.
What I thought about as you're describing that is clearing space. So what we're doing here is encouraging others to clear some of the mental space
Yes.
that has been weighing them down just in your own world, because there's things that weigh on you that you keep to yourself, but also in a relationship setting to have the discussion that you don't want to have because you're unsure of how that's going to go, and it might really change things, or you don't like the confrontation that might ensue. But having that conversation is going to clear space either to grow closer with this person, or recognize that maybe we're not a great fit to spend as much time together as we have been.
Yes.
And then it clears space for the next good person to enter your life and use that time.
Yeah.
But if you are unable to have these types of conversations out loud in real life,
Yes.
then they just sit in your mind and weigh you down, slow you down. And the progress that we make, although it might happen, it's going to be way slower than it will be if you can have these conversations out loud.
Yes, and just letting them, I think, play out organically. That's something that I want to be better at, and not, you know, I've gotten stuck in my life at certain times of getting 75 steps ahead of myself when it comes to relationships with people, where my mind is trying to figure it out so preemptively, and I think life is not meant to always be figured out up here. It's like meant to, and for those listening, pointing at my head, it's not meant to be figured out in your head all the time. I think just allowing it to truly organically unfold, and kind of trusting the process, and just allowing, again, coming back to allowing it all to kind of flow through and make space for it all as you're maneuvering life, I think is super important.
That's good. And as we enter these like segments, I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I just got to believe that really is relatable for a lot of people. So thank you.
So.
Thank you, Bryan.
Absolutely.
And now, being wrong, is there something else you realize you've been wrong about as you've entered this process, or maybe just something else from your life in general that you've really changed your mind about, and now would like to say that you were wrong so that someone else might recognize the error in their ways, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm as messed up as I initially thought I was.
Okay.
To be honest with you. I think, you know, going back to this whole conversation around, you know, having things live out in our minds, how incredibly shameful it can become. I think I've fallen victim to that, I think, in a really big way. And you know, the example that I used in the interview that I did with Jana, and kind of the example when it comes to OCD that I've felt comfortable at least talking about up until this point, was having this intrusive thought about, what if I take that knife and I stab my mom? Like, I guess I should probably give some context to that if that's the first time you've ever heard me say that, but because that might be slightly alarming. But, obsessive compulsive disorder can operate in this way of, we, as human beings, we all have thoughts that run the gamut. We all have thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts, disturbing thoughts, interesting thoughts, all of them. And generally, as somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder, those thoughts get really stuck in our psyche. So if you don't have obsessive compulsive disorder, generally that thought's going to come in. You're going to be like, wow, that was a really bizarre thought. And you're kind of like, all right, I'm going to move on with my day. And it doesn't take you out too much. OCD, that thought gets so looped in your brain and you're examining it from every possible angle. And what does that say about me? Does this mean that I'm an awful person? Does this mean that I want to do that awful thing? And that's the cruelty of OCD, is that it says nothing about your character. It's just you have a human mind that comes up with thoughts that are all over the place, and we attach way too much meaning to it and really start questioning our character. So that was kind of one of my early intrusive thoughts that really scared the crap out of me when I was younger. But I used that example in the interview with Jana, and Curt, I cannot tell you the number of people that I have heard from, whether that's Facebook messages, emails, whatever it is, Instagram messages, of people saying, oh my gosh, I have struggled with that too. And there has been so much of that it's been just kind of this peak for me, because I haven't been doing this for a very long time, but just this peek into when we share things, we're not as alone as we think we are in the struggle. And unless you openly, not everybody always has that opportunity, right, to share something in a big way and kind of get that validation from other people or kind of see that play out. And I know life is so experiential. You need to go through some of that stuff sometimes to really drive the point home. But I tell you what, there's a lot of people out there going through things that have been very similar to what I've gone through. And when I was in the midst of a lot of that stuff, I felt like I was the worst human in the world. So I think I'm starting to realize that I just may have been wrong about that.
When we are inside of our own mind, we can think of all the ways that we're messed up, but if we release that and see that everyone's kind of messed up, then the definition of being messed up is, or the bar is set at a different level. So no, you're not messed up at all. That's just, they're totally normal. And maybe not everyone experiences the same thing you do, but we all experience things that make us feel like there's something wrong with us. But if everyone experiences that, then there's nothing wrong with any of us. We're just human.
And we're all a hot mess. And that's okay. That is so comforting to me to remind myself of that day in and day out. It's okay to be a mess. I think we all feel that. And the difference between people that let it get them down and people that carry on is the people that can just say, I'm going to let myself be a hot mess and I'm still going to go to work. I'm still going to go hang out with my friends. I'm still going to go, whatever it is, still going to go be with my family. It's just invite it all along for the ride. It's okay to be a mess. We all are. We're all human.
We are. Bryan, you are one of the great humans that I know, one of the few guests that have been on a second time on People I Know show, and I appreciate you taking the time again and sharing a different version of your story now that some time has passed. And I hope that this, again, finds another way to connect with people, that you're okay no matter who you are and what's going on, and it might be worth it to start talking about it a little bit more, talking about pieces of it a little bit more. Would you say?
Absolutely agree with that. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for being here, Bryan.
An honor.